This is RSS and the BJP. They have stolen this nationalism from us. Should we be proud of being an Indian? I'm proud of being an Indian because अरे कोई पड़ोसी नहीं मानता आप विश्वगुरु बन गए कैसे बन गए? Nationalism is the currency of our political discussion. In a post-colonial country, a country which has fought against colonial rule, which has come out, nationalism is the very language that we speak about. And everything has been articulated in and through nationalism. Our freedom struggle, which articulated that idea of nationalism, is at the core of our political thinking. And unfortunately, that language of nationalism has been degraded so much that today it has become more like a football club loyalty. That is what worries me. So when there is Indo-Pak conflict, border conflict, almost a 4-day war, there is a nationalist euphoria. Understandably so, anywhere in the world this would be the case. The question is, what is the content of this nationalism? I look at it and I worry because this is very different from the kind of nationalism this country had 100 years ago when we were fighting an alien power, when nationalism was the prominent concern. Our nationalism was much more open-ended. Our nationalism was, as I say, it was about belonging without othering, which is a beautiful sentiment, you know. So our nationalism has been very different from the European variety of nationalism. And unfortunately, we have forgotten that distinction. You know, in Europe, if you say about some political party, if someone says this party is nationalist, what's the immediate connection? You would say, all right, so they are anti-immigrant, they are possibly white supremacist, they are jingoist, they are, cultural chauvinists, and so on and so forth. But this is not what nationalism was in India. And I worry, and the reason why I come back to nationalism is that people like us, those who want a liberal India, those who want a India which is plural, an India which respects diversity, we have lost that nationalist currency. Right. That's why I come back to it, and that's why it becomes so very easy to dub people like us. The moment we say something sensible, anti-national. Right. Why? Because we've lost that currency. To regain that currency of nationalism has to be one of the principal political tasks today.
Right. So you say we have lost nationalism, but there's also this assertion, Professor Suhas Palshikar wrote in response to your first article in the series on nationalism, that this was in fact nationalism that was stolen from us. Our nationalism was stolen from us. Could you elaborate a little on this difference between nationalism that was lost and nationalism that was stolen?
I've been lucky to receive many responses to this article from Professor Suhas Palshikar, Professor Hilal Ahmed, and recently we had Professor Akil Bilgrami. So I really feel very grateful that people of this stature have cared to respond to this argument. Professor Palshikar's corrective, and I think it's a corrective to what I said. He says, look, it's not a nationalism we just forgot. Look, it's not that somehow absent-mindedly we lost it. Someone came and stole it from us, and let's name that someone. I've also named that in my article, but Professor Palshikar clearly delineates that and says, this is RSS and the BJP. They have stolen this nationalism from us. So Professor Palshikar and I agree on the basics. We both agree that what is being presented in the country today as Rashtravad is actually a phony nationalism. It's a very poor copycat of European-style nationalism. This is not Indian nationalism. We both agree. And I think I agree with him that this has been stolen. In a sense, I do blame and indict the rulers of India through the 60s, 70s, 80s. And by rulers, I don't mean only political parties. Those who control intellectual establishments of India, those who control media of India, we failed to cultivate this very unique Indian nationalism, which I call, for simplicity's sake, I say, this is a Vivid Bharati nationalism. We remember the word Vivid Bharati,
Yeah.
which in childhood we associated with the radio station.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
such a
yeah.
beautiful,
Yeah.
this is Vivid Bharati nationalism is Indian nationalism. But what is being promoted today is Hindi, Hindu, Hindustan nationalism,
Mm.
which is a travesty of Indian nationalism. We should have preserved it. We did not work enough. So if we say someone stole it, all right, some responsibility resides with us as well. And that's where we need to think many things afresh. And let's start with three simple questions that any nationalism would ask. Number one, what is India?
Mm.
There can be two answers. One answer can be, oh, look, India is an accident of history. Some political boundaries have been drawn. There's no essence to India. Every country has its own peculiar boundaries. And why should we get very sentimental about this? The other answer is, India, the state called India, is an inheritor to the civilization called India. These are two very different answers.
Right.
Very many modern people give the first answer. And people like Nirmal Verma insisted on the second answer, that they said that there is a civilizational content to India. That's one. Second, should we be proud of being an Indian? Now, once again, there are two ways of being proud. One is to say, I'm proud because I hate China, because I hate Pakistan, because everyone else is poor, Mera Desh Mahan, etc. That's idiotic, jingoist, or of course, this that cannot stand even 1 minute of any scrutiny. But is there any other way of being proud? Our national movement again showed us the way of being proud without trying to brush under the carpet many unseemly aspects of our civilization and culture. Nirmal Verma gives an answer. Nirmal Verma says that I'm proud of being an Indian because Indian civilization has continued to carry forward that disembodied notion of the self, a self which is not detached from nature, a self which is human that are not detached from the universe. He says, India happens to have carried that forward, something that the West has lost. So I'm proud of being an Indian because it represents an element of humanity which is worth preserving. Now, this is not a jingoist answer. You cannot say this is not an answer that says, everything that happens in India is great and everything that, it's not an idiotic answer. This answer also, of course, would face tough questions. So what about caste system? What about inequalities? What about injustice to women? Does your pride not also invite some sense of shame? Gandhi had an answer to this. He said, unless you feel ashamed of certain things that are happening in India, you cannot feel proud of being in India. But Gandhi had the courage. And Nirmal Verma is proud of being an Indian because India produced a Gandhi who could question the modern civilization. So the second question is broadly, do you feel proud? Do you take pride in India, notwithstanding all the problems? And mind you, this is not a pride that only Indians can have. Nirmal Verma is equally happy with Pushkin taking pride in the Russian culture. He's equally happy with other people taking pride in other cultures. In every country, if I say, that my mother cooked a roti which I've never tasted again in my life, it doesn't mean that the auntie next door cooked bad rotis. It doesn't mean that others were poor. It just means that this is unique to me. So that's the second thing. And third is, do we owe something to this entity called nation? Or is it something that we just, that it's one of the many loyalties that we possibly have? Do I owe anything to Delhi's IPL cricket team? I don't think I owe them very much. I happen to live in this city. I don't feel particularly attached to it. But is that the way I should relate to my nation? Do I owe something to this nation? What is it that I owe? These are questions that modern liberal progressive people have not really confronted. They do not give answers that work, answers that have deep cultural resonance. And that's why I turn to someone like Nirmal Verma, who offers answers that I'm not happy with. But he forces us to ask questions. These are questions. These are core cultural, civilizational questions. When you're so cut off from your culture, it produces two reactions. One is, well, a sense of awkwardness and shame. And let's face it, a large number of English educated modern Indians have a deep sense of inferiority about being an Indian. We don't talk about it, but that inferiority either takes a sense of aping the West, or the same sense of inferiority also takes the sense that this reaction of Mera Bharat Mahan, Vishwaguru. अरे कोई पड़ोसी नहीं मानता आप विश्वगुरु बन गए कैसे बन गए so these are the same reactions that come from a cultural vacuousness, and that cultural vacuousness needs to be attended to. So these are the questions that we need to face when we think about nations. The interesting thing is that if you ask any Indian, Bengali or non-Bengali, was Rabindranath Tagore nationalist? 99.9% would tell you, of course he was nationalist. Of course he is the epitome of our nationalism. As an Indian, I take pride in. None of them know that Rabindranath Tagore actually wrote a book, indicting nationalism. And this is, to my mind, the beauty of Indian nationalism. That Indian nationalism actually entertained and completely admitted debates about nationalism itself. In a jingoist nationalism, in a German-style nationalism, in an Israel-style nationalism, you cannot have debates about nationalism is good or bad. You are anti-national, you are thrown out. But Rabindranath Tagore questions nationalism, critiques nationalism, and yet remains our national icon, undisputed national icon. This is the beauty of Indian nationalism, because which admits questions about itself. On the other deeper question of is it only an enchantment with state? And it is true. The association of in nationalism joined with an enchantment with modern state, a modern state which is increasingly more powerful, increasingly less tolerant, increasingly with greater capacity for violence, is something to be thought through. It is something indeed. And so it's the state part of nation state that needs to be thought through. And Professor Gipil Grami is absolutely right to bring in Gandhi on this question, because Gandhi always, while he was deeply nationalist, and in fact, Gandhi and Tagore have a wonderful exchange on this question. And in a sense, to my mind, if you allow me to paraphrase, what Gandhi was saying to Tagore is this: that what you call nationalism is a European variety of nationalism. We don't take that seriously. Our nationalism is very different. And why are you criticizing our kind of nationalism? To my mind, these two nationalisms should be given two different names altogether. Just for ease, so that we don't need to vicariously carry the guilt of German nationalism. We should just carry the pride of Indian nationalism, the positivity of Indian nationalism, which connected me to the rest of the world. So should we question nationalism? Yes, if nationalism degenerates into this, the pseudo-nationalism, the phony nationalism, the aggressive jingoist nationalism that pits me against my neighbor, then of course some people should stand up and question. And I salute those Indians. I may not agree with them, but those who have the courage to stand up to this, I think we should salute that. However, my preferred option would be to argue and say that this is not nationalism at all. Remember, my nationalism connected me to the struggle of people in South Africa. My nationalism connected me to Palestinians. My nationalism connected me to South America, Latin America, and their struggles. My nationalism took me to Bando. My nationalism is not about hating my neighbor. So I would much rather, I would absorb that critique of nationalism to forge and reinforce a very typical, unique Indian nationalism. We should be proud of that Indian nationalism.